As we know, Sergio Perez's 2024 season has been a bit of a disaster, sitting in 7th in the standings in arguably the fastest car on the grid and being outqualified more times by Logan Sargent than Albon has in his whole career. So I thought, seeing on this year's game you can drive as any of the current F1 drivers, why not take over Perez's season from the Dutch Grand Prix and try salvage a title challenging year. So we come to the Dutch Grand Prix, which is a must win for us, being 185 points behind Max, and we qualified on pole but by only 500ths of a second. We also got off to a pretty poor start, dropping all the way down to 3rd behind Sainz. However, it took us a couple laps later to get Sainz, but we was now 2 seconds off Max, and with it being so tight in qualifying was going to make it really hard to close up to him. So for the next laps, after I was giving it my all to close up to Max and bringing the gap down to 1.6 seconds in the space of 3 laps, which meant it would take us around 5 more laps before we can make a move. But the greatest team radio of all time happened.
Okay, information on Verstappen. Okay, they're slowing down. It seems like there's some kind of problem with their car.
The F1 gods once again gave us a bit of luck, and as we got to lap 8, we sent it around the outside of Max in front of his home crowd to take the lead of the race. However, we needed to make a gap to him if he eventually fixed his problem with the car. So I got my foot down and managed to pull the gap to around 5 seconds before others started to overtake, and it was pretty obvious at this point the problem was not going to be fixed, and we managed to take Perez's first win of the season at our teammates' home race, which is going to be a massive morale boost and hopefully get us closer to that title. But we eventually came to Sergio's home race near the end of the calendar, and with 2 more wins under our belt and managed to reduce the gap now to 106 points, with only around 125 points available, meant after this weekend it needed to be under 100 points to still be within a good chance of the title. Therefore needed to be a must-win race and the first ever for Sergio at home. We came into the weekend with the car actually not the fastest and somewhat down the order, so challenging for the win was going to be a bit of a challenge, but something what needed to be done. We fortunately outqualified our teammate, but we were 3/10 off pole in 5th position. We did then come to race day, and as we know, Mexico does have one of the longest runs to turn 1, and we were on a different strategy with Charles, which is a risk but one needed to have a chance of winning. And we did get off to a good start, pulling alongside the McLaren of Norris and making the move on him in turn 1 and 2 to get into P3. We then stuck behind Sainz until lap 3 when we didn't really have the straight line speed and got overtaken by Norris into turn 1, who then made the move on Sainz, allowing us to get a bit of momentum and dive around the outside of Norris again to get into P2. It was now about chasing down Charles on the same strategy to get this important win, but that plan didn't really work out. As the laps after, we got overtaken again by the 2 of Sainz and Norris. With our tyres completely shot, we needed to pit ASAP and go for the undercut, which Charles did as well. Fortunately, after we pit, both of us managed to pull each other along and come out way ahead of the rest of the pack on the undercut and focus on battling for the win. Lap after lap went by and we traded positions with Charles and the Mexican crowd going mental. We eventually got to the final lap, but with Charles starting to extend the gap, it didn't look good. We really needed to dig deep and get this win, and coming into the last lap and into the stadium section, we made the move on Charles, going side by side in front of the home crowd. We had the inside and squeezed Charles out to take Perez's first home win and a vital one to still be in the championship. We were now 89 points behind Max with 4 races to go, which is still completely doable for the championship. And as we went through the next 3 races of Vegas, Brazil and Qatar, managing to grab 2 wins and a 3rd place, leaving the gap not just to Max but also Norris in the championship to 14 points going into the final race, making it a hard challenge to get over, but a completely doable one if we win the race and they both finish down the order. But as we came into Q3 at the last race, it was really important to start near the front, and from our first run wasn't a great lap. However, wasn't for Norris or Max either, being in 7th and 8th. And on our final run, we put in a really good lap to actually cross the line in P2, but some way off pole. But as you can see, Lando and Max starting in 8th and 9th, which is an absolute miracle for the race. And if we finish in 2nd and Max finishes 8th, should give us the title depending on how many wins we have each. But we came to race day and a remarkable season nonetheless for Perez, but it's important to go for this title and stop Max's dominance, and we got off to a decent start keeping hold of P2. However, Max had a mega start and got up to P4, meaning we could still do it if we finished P1 plus the fastest lap. So lap after lap went by and we actually had the fastest lap, but we could not really close down Charles in that Ferrari. And as we came into the pits, and as usual, unfortunately did get held up by traffic coming out behind Charles, now 4 seconds off him. And with Max still in 4th, really showed we need to close down Charles to win this title. So I went full sweat mode, picking a couple of tenths off Charles's time each lap and getting it below 2 seconds, and plus now Max losing a position going into P5. We still needed first, but didn't need to worry about the fastest lap, and as we got to lap 30 we did actually set the fastest lap, but showed we was closing down Charles and was within 1.8 seconds. We just needed that last bit more to do it. We then got to lap 14, it stayed around the same, but unfortunately for the final lap it did as well, and we couldn't find the time needed. As Max was still battling for 4th, we was coming to the end of the lap and yet again crossed the line in P2 and failed to win the championship. We can see Max winning the championship there, and it was a mega year still to be within a title fight at the final race, but didn't quite have enough in the end, which is gutting. But we did have a little surprise from the team as we got back to Monaco, and it was to re-sign for them for another year, and we did eventually save Perez's season.